Listen to me carefully, because what I'm about to say will shift something inside of you. Some of you women are not broken. You are not bitter. You are not cold. You are simply becoming. And when a woman begins to become, she begins to detach. Not because she doesn't care, but because she finally does. Not from others, but for herself. That detachment is not a sign of rebellion. That detachment is a sign of revelation. Because when you discover who you are in God, you stop needing to be everything to everybody else. That moment right there, that is God's gift to the strong woman. See, when God begins to elevate a woman, he doesn't always change her surroundings. He changes her sensitivity. Suddenly, what used to entertain her grieves her spirit. What used to be acceptable now becomes intolerable. That is not attitude, that is awakening. And God is saying to you, daughter, I am detaching you to preserve what I have placed in you. A strong woman does not need to announce her exit. Her silence is her strategy, because she understands purpose cannot be explained to those who are addicted to her presence but allergic to her calling. Her detachment is not emotional weakness, it is emotional wisdom. It is the revelation that she is not called to everyone, she is called to destiny. You cannot carry greatness and still beg for company. You cannot birth nations while babysitting dysfunction. And the strong woman knows this, so God begins to train her in the art of holy detachment. She learns to let go with grace and to walk away with peace. Not because she stopped loving, but because she started listening to the Spirit. Sometimes God will remove you emotionally before he removes you physically. Your feelings will start to lose connection to people, places, and patterns that once held your loyalty. Don't fight it. That's not trauma, that's transition. That's heaven pulling you into alignment. You see, a woman who walks with God is not afraid to be alone. She is not driven by need, she is anchored by knowing. And what she knows is this: I was not designed to be drained, I was designed to be fruitful. So she begins to preserve her oil. She begins to guard her heart. She stops casting pearls where there is no purpose. God is gifting you, woman of strength, with the courage to disconnect, not to isolate, but to incubate. Your womb, spiritual, emotional, and intellectual, cannot afford pollution. So he calls you into separation, not because you are better than others, but because what is inside of you is not yet born. And what is not born must be protected from what is familiar. The strong woman understands seasons. She knows there is a time to pour and a time to pull back. There is a time to engage and a time to retreat. And this detachment, this divine pause, is not stagnation, it is preparation. Because God never sends a woman forth without first setting her apart. And listen, when you stop reacting to everything, when you stop explaining yourself, when you stop showing up to every emotional invitation, that is not pride. That is power under control. That is spiritual maturity. That is the gift. God is gifting the strong woman with the strength to release, the wisdom to discern, and the vision to move forward unapologetically. She doesn't need closure. She doesn't need applause. She doesn't even need to be understood. She only needs to be obedient. And sometimes obedience looks like silence. It looks like absence. It looks like, I love you, but I must leave you. Not because of hate, but because of heritage. Because legacy cannot be built in low places. A strong woman does not seek validation from others. She receives her identity from the Creator. That means her sense of worth is not tied to applause, attention, or affirmation. She does not live to be seen. She lives to be sent. When a woman truly understands who she is in God, she stops asking people who she is She no longer needs external confirmation to feel internal security. She no longer waits for someone to tell her she's enough. She wakes up knowing it. And this knowing doesn't come from books, beauty, or background. It comes from divine revelation. It comes from time spent in the secret place where God whispers into her spirit, "You are mine." You see, the danger of living for validation is that your identity becomes negotiable. One moment you're high, the next you're low, all because someone clapped or walked away. But when your identity comes from God, it is sealed. It is fixed. It is eternal. You are not moved by compliments or crushed by criticism. You're moved by conviction. And that is what makes you dangerous to darkness, because you cannot be manipulated. You cannot be bought. You cannot be broken by human opinion. This kind of woman is rare because she has discovered that self-worth is a product of divine workmanship. She's not trying to be accepted. She already is. She's not running after roles or relationships to complete her. She is already whole. And that wholeness produces a quiet confidence. She doesn't need to announce her value. She embodies it. Her posture, her peace, her presence, it all speaks for her. Because when God becomes your source, people can no longer be your standard. And that is when a woman becomes unshakable. That is when she becomes strong, not in personality, but in purpose. Detachment is not rejection. It is redirection of emotional investment toward divine purpose. Many confuse emotional distance with bitterness or pride, but in reality, it is often a deep alignment with heaven's priorities. When a woman begins to detach, it does not mean she has stopped loving. It means she has started discerning. She recognizes that not every relationship, conversation, or commitment is worthy of her spiritual energy. She has learned that her emotions are not just feelings, they are currency. And where she spends them determines what grows in her life. Detachment is a divine strategy. It is the Spirit's way of pruning her life so that what remains is fruitful. There comes a point in a strong woman's journey when she no longer invests in what drains her. She no longer entertains what distracts her, and she no longer chases what God is trying to remove. She understands that her heart must be guarded, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. She begins to reserve her emotions for what aligns with her assignment. She doesn't hate those she pulls away from. She just knows that proximity without purpose is a liability. The strong woman has come to realize that not everything that feels good is good for her destiny. So she redirects. She pulls her soul out of situations that once comforted her, but now confine her. She lets go of conversations that go in circles and relationships that go nowhere. She learns that rejection is often heaven's redirection, and detachment is how God makes room for the next dimension. She doesn't explain herself. She doesn't argue with what is fading. She simply follows peace. Because where there is peace, there is purpose. And where there is purpose, there must be room. So she detaches, not to disappear, but to realign. God gifts the strong woman with discernment to walk away not out of pride, but out of clarity. There is a moment in every spiritually mature woman's life when she realizes that walking away is not an emotional reaction, it's a spiritual decision. It's not about proving a point, it's about protecting her purpose. When God gives a woman discernment, she begins to see beyond surface behavior. She sees motives, patterns, atmospheres. She doesn't just hear words, she feels the weight behind them. And when the Spirit whispers, "It's time," she moves. Not because she's angry, but because she's awake. Pride demands attention, but clarity seeks alignment. The strong woman walks away not to be seen, but to stay clean. She knows that staying in what God is no longer blessing will cost her peace, her energy, and her vision. So when she walks, it's not to reject, it's to respond. It's not to harm, it's to heal. And that kind of movement cannot be explained to everyone. It can only be obeyed. Discernment is God's way of giving you vision for things that haven't happened yet. You begin to sense when something no longer fits, not because something dramatic occurred, but because your spirit has shifted. What used to excite you now burdens you. What once held your attention now steals your focus. That shift is not confusion, it's clarity. It's God saying, this season is over. And because she is strong, the woman who walks with discernment does not wait for closure. She does not wait for confirmation from people. Her confirmation comes from the Spirit. So she obeys without applause. She exits without bitterness, and she moves forward without needing a map, because she knows. When God gives you the gift of clarity, the greatest act of courage is to walk away. True strength is not loud. It is the quiet power of self-governance and spiritual stability. Many confuse strength with noise, with visibility, with dominance. But heaven defines strength differently. A strong woman does not need to raise her voice to raise a standard. She does not need to be seen to be secure. Her power is not in how much she can control others, but in how completely she governs herself. And that kind of strength is rare because it is rooted in discipline, not drama. It is birthed in stillness, not chaos. This strength is internal. It is the ability to remain steady when everything around her is shaking. It is the wisdom to hold her tongue when she could destroy with her words. It is the discernment to choose peace when conflict is calling her name. That strength is not theatrical, it is spiritual. It flows from a heart anchored in God, not swayed by emotion or opinion. And when a woman walks in this level of authority, she becomes untouchable, not because she is inaccessible, but because she is real. She does not need to prove herself. She does not compete, she completes. She does not rush, she moves by revelation. And because she is governed by the Spirit, not by impulse, she doesn't have to chase what belongs to her. She understands that strength is not in how loud she shouts, but in how deeply she trusts. She does not panic in pressure. She prays. She does not fight for control. She surrenders to divine order. This woman is calm in the storm, not because the storm is small, but because her foundation is strong. She has mastered the art of stillness. And in that stillness, God speaks. In that stillness, heaven moves. That is the strength that cannot be shaken. When a woman detaches emotionally, it is often because her spirit has outgrown her environment. What once felt like comfort now feels like confinement. The same places, the same people, the same conversations begin to feel too small for what God is growing inside of her. It's not arrogance, it's awakening. She is not being distant, she is being drawn. Her detachment is not about escape, it is about elevation. Her spirit begins to sense what her mind can't yet explain, that she no longer fits where she used to flourish. This kind of detachment doesn't come from pain, it comes from purpose. It's not always dramatic, sometimes it's quiet, subtle. She starts speaking less, observing more. She loses interest in things that used to excite her. Her soul is preparing for something greater. And while others may misread it as attitude or withdrawal, what's really happening is that God is stretching her internally before he shifts her externally. When your spirit outgrows your surroundings, you cannot fake fulfillment. You may try to stay to keep the peace, to hold on to familiarity, but eventually the unease becomes undeniable. Your peace begins to leak. Your joy feels delayed, and your vision starts pulling you away from what used to hold your loyalty. This is not failure, it's formation. It's the sign that your next season is calling. God often allows a quiet disconnection before he opens a public door. Emotional detachment then is a spiritual cue. It's not just about leaving, it's about making room. Because where you are can no longer contain what's in you. And if you don't detach, you'll start to shrink your spirit to stay in places that can't handle your growth. That is why your spirit moves first, because destiny refuses to wait. Emotional detachment is a form of stewardship. It protects destiny from unnecessary warfare. When a woman understands the weight of what she carries, she becomes careful with where she invests her emotions. Not every conflict deserves a response. Not every conversation deserves her energy. And not every connection deserves access to her heart. She recognizes that her emotions are sacred ground, and where she places them determines the flow of her life. Stewardship is not just about money or time, it's also about managing your emotional currency. And a strong woman knows that peace is too expensive to spend on petty battles. This kind of detachment is not avoidance, it's alignment. It's choosing not to bleed where there is no bandage. It's refusing to explain yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. It is the wisdom to reserve emotional energy for purpose, not for performance. Because the more emotionally entangled you are in distractions, the less clarity you will have for destiny. So God teaches her to guard her peace like a gatekeeper. She becomes selective, not out of fear, but out of focus. Battles that are sent simply to drain her before she can arrive at her next. There are people sent not to destroy her, but to distract her. And if she does not steward her emotions, she will find herself exhausted by things that were never assigned to her. Emotional detachment then becomes a weapon. It becomes a wall against unnecessary warfare. It becomes the silence that protects her strategy. A strong woman doesn't argue with fools. She doesn't explain her value. She doesn't chase chaos to prove she can handle it. She simply detaches, wisely, quietly, and strategically, because the war for her purpose is real. And she has learned not to waste her fire on battles that don't matter. Emotional strength is the ability to love deeply without losing yourself in the process. A strong woman knows how to give without becoming empty, how to support without becoming small, and how to care without collapsing under the weight of other people's expectations. She has learned that love must flow from a full place, not a desperate one. Her love is not a cry for approval, it is an expression of identity. And because she knows who she is, she can love without needing to be needed. She can give without demanding something in return. This kind of emotional strength comes from experience, but more importantly, it comes from revelation. She has learned that true love does not erase her, it expands her. It doesn't demand her silence, it respects her voice. And when love starts to feel like suffocation, she understands that it's no longer love, it's control in disguise. So she protects her soul, not because she's hard, but because she sets boundaries, not as a barrier to connection, but as a defense against dysfunction. There was a time when she gave too much, stayed too long, and lost herself trying to save others. But grace taught her that her value is not in how much she sacrifices, but in how well she stewards her own soul. She realized that self-abandonment is not love, it's spiritual neglect. And so she began to rise. She began to pull her heart back from places that could not carry it. She began to separate her worth from her ability to fix what was never hers to fix. This emotional strength allows her to show up fully, love deeply, and walk away peacefully when necessary. Because she now loves from her identity, not her insecurity. She gives from overflow, not depletion. Silence is often the loudest expression of strength. A strong woman does not need to announce every decision, defend every boundary, or explain every move. There is a power in her stillness that speaks louder than words ever could. She has learned that sometimes the most anointed response is no response. Not because she's weak, but because she's wise. She understands that silence is not absence, it is authority under control. It is discernment in action. It is peace refusing to negotiate with chaos. When a woman matures in spirit, she stops wasting words on situations that do not deserve her voice. She no longer fights for understanding in places where misunderstanding is intentional. She no longer pleads for peace in atmospheres that feed off conflict. Her silence becomes a wall, protecting her mind, her spirit, and her purpose. And in that silence, God speaks. In that quietness, strategies are formed. In that stillness, strength is built. You see, loud reactions are often rooted in insecurity, but silence, that comes from a place of settled identity. It means you no longer need to be right in the eyes of others because you are already right with God. It means you've moved beyond needing to be heard to knowing when to listen. And in that quiet confidence, you become dangerous because you are no longer controlled by emotion. You are led by vision. Her silence is not indifference, it is intentional. She is not ignoring life, she is insulating destiny. She is not cold, she is consecrated. Because when God begins to call her higher, he often pulls her into silence. And in that divine quiet, she becomes grounded, clear, and focused. She stops announcing her next move and starts walking in it. And when she does speak, her words carry weight because they are born in the fire of silence. The strong woman no longer allows access based on history. She grants access based on alignment. There was a time when she held on to people, places, and patterns simply because they were familiar. She confused longevity with loyalty and presence with purpose. But growth has taught her that not everything from her past can walk with her into her future. She now understands that proximity without purpose is a burden, not a blessing. And alignment is more powerful than attachment. She has learned to examine the direction of a person's life before giving them access to hers. She no longer asks, how long have we known each other? She now asks, are we going in the same direction? Because where she is going is too costly to carry extra weight. She is not being harsh, she is being honest. She has come to realize that peace is not just about who stays, it's also about who's allowed in. Emotional maturity has taught her to audit, access, not out of pride, but out of protection. A strong woman is no longer moved by guilt. She is not obligated to entertain what exhausts her or to explain her boundaries to those who benefit from crossing them. She doesn't need to make an announcement when access is revoked. She simply closes the door and keeps walking. She understands that every connection either pushes her toward purpose or pulls her away from it. And so she chooses wisely. She is not afraid to outgrow what no longer fits. She is not ashamed to elevate, even if it means walking alone for a while, because she knows alignment attracts divine acceleration. When she protects her circle, she protects her calling. And when access is governed by vision, not emotion, her life becomes uncluttered and powerful. A strong woman has mastered the art of being full without being loud. Her presence carries weight, not because she demands attention, but because she embodies purpose. She no longer feels the need to announce her worth, compete for validation, or explain her silence. She understands that the most powerful people are not always the most visible. They are the most grounded. Her identity is not in display, it is in depth. She is anchored, not easily moved by opinion, noise, or pressure. And in that still confidence, she becomes magnetic, not for attention, but for alignment. This fullness is not pride, it is clarity. It is the quiet knowing that she is enough, not because others say it, but because God confirmed it. She does not chase platforms, she builds foundations. She is not loud because she doesn't need to be. Her life speaks, her fruit speaks, her peace speaks. She knows that being rooted in God's purpose will always be louder than trying to impress people. And because she is full within, she is not hungry for external applause. There was a time when she tried to prove her strength, her value, her significance. But now she simply walks in it. She no longer reacts, she responds. She no longer explains, she exemplifies. Her silence is not emptiness, it is evidence. It is the power of knowing who she is, whose she is, and where she is going. She has outgrown the need to be understood because she has understood herself. This kind of fullness cannot be faked. It is cultivated in the secret place, in seasons of pruning, in moments of surrender. She no longer performs, she embodies. She walks in rooms with quiet assurance, not to take space, but to shift it. And even when she says nothing, her presence releases permission for others to rise. You were never called to be common. You were not created to be easily understood, quickly accessed, or casually handled. You are God's sacred investment, carrying purpose, vision, and power that cannot be confined by shallow expectations. The strength you carry is not just for survival, it is for transformation. You are the evidence that a woman can be soft and unshaken, loving and detached, humble and deeply powerful. So guard your peace like a throne, protect your vision like a seed, move in silence when necessary, speak with authority when required, and walk away without apology when God says it's time. Emotional detachment is not the absence of love. It is the presence of wisdom. You do not need to fight for a place you've outgrown. You do not need to prove what has already been appointed. When God calls you deeper, he also calls you higher. And the woman who answers that call, who walks in purpose, protects her soul, and refuses to shrink, becomes unstoppable. You are not hard to love, you are just hard to deceive. You are not distant, you are divinely directed. You are not cold, you are called. This is God's gift to you. Clarity that protects your heart, strength that guards your destiny, and wisdom that refuses to settle. You are the proof that a strong woman in alignment with heaven cannot be shaken. Stand firm, stay set apart, and never apologize for evolving beyond what no longer reflects your assignment.